Long ball number one here on Friday morning. According to FIFA data released this morning, or at least reported on this morning, more than $2 billion was spent in the January transfer window globally, breaking all sorts of records. So the little bit of a dip after COVID is long gone. What do you make of that? Not just domestically, internationally, across the globe, soccer teams spending money for
Yeah.
players.
The transfer market go crazy. I mean, that is
Yeah,
incredible. By the way, as I mentioned, Manchester City accounted for 10% of
10%.
that spending. 179 million pounds, $223 million. Yeah, Rob, what's the
Just four players.
for four players? For four players. Yeah, Omar Marmoush, Nico Gonzalez, Abdou Kodir, I'm going to get that out one day. Abdou Kodir Kusanov and Vitor Reis during the January window. That was pretty incredible. Premier League total 498.7 million pounds. So that right there is that's a quarter of the 2 billion, right? So it is it's interesting because January is normally a time when you're paying a premium for a player, right? In Europe, you're mid-season, and yeah, I know some of this money is not European spending. MLS did spend a little bit of money, not hundreds of millions of dollars, but more than 100 million, I think. And so there are teams that are sort of preseason looking to add pieces that will spend in January, and it kind of makes sense. But if you're a Premier League club, if you're a club in Germany, France, Spain, whatever, you're paying like a winter premium. It's like instead of like coming out of Christmas and everything's marked down because they're trying to get rid of inventory, it's the other way around. It's like everything gets marked up because supply and demand has flipped on its head as clubs get desperate. I wonder what the Manchester City premium was. They're paying a tax because they're city. Everybody knows they have crazy money. They are desperate now because of the dip that they've taken in terms of their fortunes. And it's like if you are selling more Marmouche, you go, hey, throw in an extra 20 or an extra 10 because you need him and we have him. And what are you going to do? Say no? I think that's part of this, right, Rob? And again, so it's not just, by the way, this simple thing, and I don't want to dig too deep into this because it's very depressing.
Okay.
But it's not just that simple thing of team A needs player A and they call team B and they ask how much and the team says, oh, it's 50, and then they pay it and everybody goes about their way and the player makes the move. Sometimes players get moved around because of the books, right? Because, and especially in an era of PSR and some of the financial controls that are in place, sometimes this is, I don't know if I want to call it money laundering so much as I want to call it creative accounting gets done because players are moved in January, Robert.
Yeah. There's definitely there's always been an element of the laundering ish sort of an influence on these things, and then obviously Americans are very familiar with having to move players because of caps and certain regulations and stuff like that. But to your point of paying premiums in January and teams obviously willingly doing so with so much spending in January is buying your wife a present on January 18th. Like the price is never going to be more of a premium than that weekend before Christmas. That is just like prime. You're desperate. You need this gift. You've waited too long. You're in a pickle. You need to buy it now. So you are going to pay that price.
Yeah, right.
And not only was there, obviously those huge budget transfers, those four transfers from City you're talking about, that was 10% of the world's spend. But just there was also just a vast amount of them. According to this FIFA data, 5,863 transfers in total, a rise of 19% from January 2024. So that's just an incredible amount of human beings transferring across the planet. It speaks to just the global nature of it, and it's interesting that MLS is now joining that kind of global ecosystem. Another note, there's also a breakdown in this data, which I thought was interesting, is which countries had the most incoming and outgoing, and this probably hasn't been true, but Brazil had 471 players come in, and in my mind, Brazil is a seller. They produce talent and then
Right.
they sell like
Right.
unless those were all South American players coming in, but that's a huge number.
Yeah, well, let's keep in mind that transfers can be inside the league as well. I mean, a team Palmeiras selling a player to Santos or whatever counts as a transfer, even if that player is not, moving from outside the league into the league.
Fair.
I don't know how many of those 471 players moved within Brazil, but I imagine it's a significant number. What's interesting here, if you want to get real weird about this, and we
Okay,
could
of
throw
course, always do.
an American soccer is weird kind of on top of this Sunday here or whatever this is. The 188 incoming transfers, I'm sorry, outgoing transfers. Major League Soccer had, or sorry, the United States. It doesn't say Major League Soccer. It says the United States had 188 outgoing transfers. I don't have their incoming number, but if a player in Major League Soccer transfers within Major League Soccer, and we're going to talk to David Gass about the cash for trades market, and there's obviously trades that happen with, GAM and all that stuff. I don't believe that hits this number because Major League Soccer is single entity and the ITC doesn't actually change legal hands per FIFA's system. Does that spin you around a little bit, Robert? Twist your brain into a pretzel? Inside Major League Soccer transfers don't count as transfers in the traditional sense because the ITC is not leaving the entity that already held it, I think is how that works.
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. You're just moving branches within the company. It's not from one
Yes, right.
entity to
Well,
another. So
I
that
mean,
makes sense.
what do all the people say that are very against the way MLS operates? That it's a franchise model, and you're basically these are McDonald's or these are KFCs, and you're just getting moved from a KFC in one city to a KFC in another. But obviously with the numbers here, it's pretty clear things have changed. You mentioned, so it's $2.35 billion that was spent, up 57.9% over last year and 47% over January 2023, which is when the previous record was set. So 47, almost a 50% increase over the previous spending record. How much of this? So City went nuts with their spending. 10% is just Manchester City on 4 players. But remember, Saudi Arabia has really started to impact the market. Now, they weren't one of the biggest spenders. Saudi Arabia was behind the Premier League, Germany, Italy, and France, with spending of $202.1 million. And we know that 79.9 of that was just John Duran, which is 64 million pounds if you care about it that way. I just, obviously that is a new player in the market that is willing to spend significant money that just adds to the numbers, right? You traditionally had big spenders in 1 or 2 leagues generally in January. German clubs don't spend 50 million per player as a general rule. They might spend 10 here and 10 there and 10 and 15 and those kind of things. Same for Spanish clubs outside of Real Madrid, who I don't think bought anybody. Real Madrid didn't make any moves in January, right? So, the big spenders outside of the Premier League really didn't do a lot here, and yet it's because of Saudi Arabia. They they do change the market, and if you're selling players, again, a la John Duran going from Aston Villa to Saudi Arabia, and you have somebody else who's outside of the traditional powerhouses that's willing to spend 80 million pounds on him, that definitely going to add to the numbers.
Interesting that former Chicago Fire John Duran, #1 most expensive transfer of the window. So not often do you see record-breaking global transfer have a little bit of a MLS sidebar.